Arne Slot needs praise for this. Arne Slot needs praise for the changes that he made to his team tonight. And some will say, there was no change, Terry. The shape was the same. Well, that's if you view football based on the graphics that the TV companies put on the screen. Like the graphics on my screen now. If you view that as that's the shape, then my message to you is, well, you don't understand football. Most teams have at least two shapes in a game when they're in possession and out of possession. But it's multi-layered. What they do when they're winning a game versus if they're losing a game. What they do when they're defending, attacking set pieces, the formation they'll go into afterwards, or the positions, because depending on what position you play, like fullbacks, for instance, they go into more central roles, don't they? Because they don't actually, most stay back because they've got a bit of speed in case of the counter-attack. But as you're defending that counter-attack, those players don't just run back to their positions. So it's a little bit more complicated than just the graphics you see on the screen. But what Liverpool did very different tonight that I was impressed with, it was just some subtle changes. So, for instance, there was more control in the game tonight. How do they have more control? Well, one of the ways that Liverpool gained more control tonight, how Liverpool were better, is they weren't committing both fullbacks forward at the same time every time. So whether that was an instruction by Slot or it was Slot bringing back Robinson, who understands this, yes, you still had two midfield players pushing forward, which leaves the holding midfield player in Gravenberch a little more isolated, that would leave your centre-backs isolated, both full-backs pushed up with them. But I'm going to show you something on the screen that I thought was interesting tonight. On the right-hand side is the average heat map for Liverpool this season, where you can see a massive heavy weight on both sides. This is when they're touching the ball. You can see that, and that is coming from the full-backs on both sides, pushing forward on a very, very regular basis. What you saw tonight was very different. It's a little bit more compact. You can see dark shade. They attacked a lot more down the left-hand side tonight the right-hand side than they did the left-hand side. But what you can see is more of a balance. You can see more of a balance where there aren't any real dark red areas this season inside Liverpool's half. And that's because what Liverpool have been doing is they have been putting lots of players in the opponent's half when they attack, meaning quick long balls on the counter have been catching them out. And there's been that space that can be exploited between the fullbacks and the centre-backs. And it's a subtle difference. And it's quite simple as when Conor Bradley's pushing forward, Anthony Robertson isn't going as far up. What that then means is Gakpo was hugging the wings. What you're also seeing tonight is Gakpo would be hugging that touchline because Conor Bradley would go forward. But as the ball was then being worked back across, as Conor Bradley was moving back into a defensive role, you wouldn't just see Robertson maybe go out to the wide areas as well. He would invert into the central areas. So it was very, very nice to see some changes tonight. Nothing groundbreaking. Fire wasn't discovered. The wheel wasn't reinvented. It was just something subtle. And I thought, let me go and look at the heat maps. Let me look at their average position at home in the season so far and compare it to tonight. And you can see, and heat maps for me are far more important than the starting position of a player on the screen. And I'll give you a standout example. Many people, Bruno at his pomp in attacking midfield for United, on the screen, you'd see him in the 10 you'd see him in a 4-2-3-1, it'd be in the 10 role. Okay? Yet, Arsenal and City would play a 4-3-3. Oh, no, Terry, you can't say KDB and Odegaard and Bruno play the same position. Two of them are 8s that play in a 3, and he's a 10. Yet, when you look to their heat maps, they were almost identical to each other, meaning where they pick up and play on the ball is similar. So I've never been someone that's been overly focused on the starting shape on the screen. It's what you do in possession. And what the heat maps show you is what my eye test saw tonight. A more balanced Liverpool at times. A more conservative Liverpool at times, which just meant they weren't as susceptible to counter-attacks. Now, I think it took Liverpool a little bit of time to get this right, because the first 15 minutes... That's the only time in the game where Villa really looked dangerous. We'll get onto the back end of the game where they had a few chances, but I think that was actually real good control by Liverpool. But once Liverpool settled into the game and just got into their own passing and moving rhythm, okay, guys, let's not overcommit. Let's make this adaptation work. They were fantastic. I'm taking nothing away from Liverpool. They were absolutely fantastic, both defensively and from an attacking point of view after that first that first 10 to 15 minutes where they were being caught a little on the counter. And whether you're someone that does it with your eyes or you like to look at the statistics or you like me, you use both, right? The big fact about tonight's game, I don't know why I put one up, 0, none, no big chances conceded. They didn't allow Aston Villa tonight to create one big chance, one gilt edge opportunity. Where Liverpool themselves, for the first time in many games, they increased their conversion rate to an acceptable amount. They scored 2 goals. They had I'd say the only downside for Liverpool tonight is they themselves only created 3 big chances. There's an irony in this. In all those other games they were losing, in those 6 out of 7 games they lost, they were creating between 6 to 7 on average per game. Where tonight, they actually created less gilt-edged chances but won the game. But the reason they were able to win the game is because they got the shutout. They got the clean sheet. They stopped Villa. Outside the opening 15 minutes where there was a couple of, good hits, but from distance, Villa didn't create anything. And that was because of the more balanced approach. I also think Slot tonight got it right in the sense of bringing in Robinson, and you're starting a team of players that's been at the club before. So you're playing in a more controlled way. You're not overly cavalier. Barring Mamardashvili, and then you've obviously got Ekatike that started very well. Everybody else is used to things. So you've got the fullbacks not bombing up as high. At times, you've got 2 midfielders in the attack, but you're playing more with a double pivot as well, which again is giving you more bodies in the central areas. Now, the one thing that wasn't tested tonight is how they would cope with an onslaught of long balls, because Villa played out from the back. And that was one thing that I as a United fan, was watching. I was thinking, what are Villa doing? They're dicing with... It was like watching a kid play with matches and then looks shocked when he sets the shed on fire. I couldn't quite believe what they were doing at the back. And it felt like a ticking time bomb. And that element was playing into Liverpool's hands. Liverpool still have one of the best high presses in world football, in my opinion. That's why a lot of teams have been going long against them this year, packing the central areas and hoping to win those second balls to create goal-scoring opportunities. But I think the team selection was very good. The subtlety... just playing the more experienced players, playing the established guys, leave the new signings on the bench for it. I know you can't leave them every week because you've got to rotate, but start to build that confidence and bleed one in and bleed another. Don't try and throw 3 or 4 in at the same time and change your system and empty the midfield and push your fullbacks forward. And maybe that defeat to Brentford last week, maybe that's all just is clicked in with Slot and he realises, be a little bit more conservative, pack the midfield, play the players that know the system and can handle the pressure of being a Liverpool player, bleed the new guys in. And if Liverpool do that, they can turn their season around. This squad has been, and this team has been ripped into in the last few weeks to a level that I think has been over the top. I don't think the signings they made are bad. I don't think Slot is an awful manager. I think he's made changes that haven't worked. I think certain players haven't started particularly well. And I feel like the situation has spiraled a little bit. I feel like the situation has got out of control when all it needed is what we saw tonight. Don't empty the midfield. Don't allow both fullbacks to continually push on whilst the midfield is emptied, right? And play players that understand. You do those couple of things and you'll leave yourself in a much better and a less precarious position. And I think Liverpool did it very, very well tonight indeed. A big shout out to Mo Salah, though. I really want to praise Mo Salah because he's had a tough year because of everything that happened to one of his best friends in Jota. And I'm not too sure why he didn't overly celebrate. I'm not too sure what the reason was. Maybe it's because he feels frustrated at Liverpool's recent form and wants to almost celebrate in a humble way. Maybe it's because of the way he scored the goal, in terms of it was a little fortuitous. And, some tennis players are probably the best in the world. They hit a point, but they hit the shot and it hits the net and they get the point the other side. They never celebrate it. They always apologise. I love that about tennis. Maybe there was an element of that in there as well. But to make 250 goals for a club as historic and as big as Liverpool is no mean feat. Or it is a mean feat. Have I got the saying wrong? It's an amazing achievement. I'll just say that. Absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to Mohamed Salah and him and his family and everyone associated to him for achieving that. And look, Mo Salah's been nowhere near the level that we've all come to expect. We know how good a football player he is. But if he can start getting back again, if he can get on a run now, and it was a much better performance tonight as well. Some of his dribbling, his touches, his play, maybe at the end on a couple of them counter-attacks, could have done a little bit better. But overall, I thought Mohamed Salah was excellent. And what some people will say is, Terry, but the back end of the game, Liverpool kind of sat back and were pinned in. And Villa didn't create shit. There was one decent play where Ross Barkley's turned and shot from inside the box, but they didn't create nothing. No clear-cut chances. Liverpool in that back end of the game, it reminded me of last year. Leading, absorbing, hitting on the counter. The only real criticism you could probably give is the counters should have been a bit more potent. That's it. But look, I want your thoughts, I want your feelings, I want your opinions. Let me know in the comment section below what you think and you feel. And yeah, Liverpool, massive win, back to winning ways, and they close that gap.